Welcome, Lucas, and thanks for joining us. Great to have you here representing Braskem. Today we're looking at Braskem's bio-based innovation journey and opportunities in APAC, and you're going to dive a bit into your business, some of your products, what your strategy is, all of that sort of good stuff. So, listen, thanks for being here. Before we dive into the questions, maybe, I'm sure a lot of the audience sort of know Braskem, but maybe you could give us a bit of an overview of the business and, more importantly, your day-to-day role within it.
For sure. Thanks, Paul, for having me and having Braskem here on board of the event. It's quite interesting to see that the bio interest remains very strong considering the global scenario, right? I think definitely we believe this is the future or the present already. And a little bit about Braskem, because I know it's not such a well-known company here in APAC. So Braskem is a Brazilian company. It started as Braskem in 2002 by consolidating the assets in Brazil. And it grew from Brazil outside the world. So today we're very big in Americas. We have our more than 40 industrial assets, which are 2 are in Germany, all the rest are in America. So we're in Brazil, we have also a cracker and a polyethylene plant in Mexico, and PP plants, polypropylene plants in US. And we started on our bio journey, I would say, and sustainability, basically since the beginning of the company. We were always looking at sustainable development. We started greenhouse gas emissions control in 2008. So this was something really embedded in the culture and the strategy of the company. And actually in 2007, we decided to build our first bioethylene plant. So it's an ethanol dehydration plant in Brazil, 200,000 tons capacity. That was actually ready in 2010. So we have been producing bio-based ethylene since 2010. So now we're entering our 16th anniversary of production. And since then has been a very long journey. It has not always been easy, right? It started very challenging. The scenario, sustainability was not such a hot topic as it is today. Bio was always present, but not through the sustainability angle, right? So we have had several learnings along the way on how to transform the industry, how to really connect with customers and promote our products. So a lot of things yesterday that connect a lot, and I see the same path, the same strategy on this. But it's been very interesting. So my role on this, I'm originally from Brazil. I moved to the Netherlands in 2018. I spent 5 years there working also in circular economy on bio projects globally. And I moved to Singapore. A lot of people ask if I'm based in Singapore, if I'm Singaporean. No, right? I'm from Brazil, but I've been 2.5 years here trying to develop our business in APAC, mostly on sustainability, but specific on our bio opportunities. Very closely working on a joint venture project we have in Thailand with SCG Chemicals to try to build our first plant in Asia and our first dehydration plant outside Brazil. So it's one of our main projects. And I continue to look for partnerships for other products and other projects as well. And maybe just to tell a little bit, I brought here to illustrate some messages about the product, what we do, right, as it's not so well known here. So it's very similar to other biopolymers. It's a drop-in, but it's a drop-in. So I heard a lot yesterday about it's important to considering the existing assets, right, not to require the customers to add on their existing capex facilities. So it's a drop-in product. It's just like the fossil base, right? It's fully traceable. So I've been talking in some offline conversations about mass balance, that this is actually traceable in a molecule. So if you produce this, you can actually trace from the sugarcane until the final product in retail. The consumer can take that product, the packaging or anything, measure, and you can see through carbon dating that you actually have a renewable carbon there. If you compare to the fossil one that it's very old, this one is a traceable, verifiable like this, right? It also helps with carbon reduction. And I think this is one of the big, strong value propositions that we have, where we're actually removing CO2 from the environment, especially when you compare to the fossil, you have a big gap. And it's also fully recyclable, right? So when you talk about biopolymers, bioplastics, there's a lot of biodegradable, right? So this product is not biodegradable, it's fully recyclable. So the difference is you can treat the recyclability the same as the rest of the 400 million tons of other plastics that you have. You don't need to contaminate the waste or have any issue. So we're continue to focus on the recyclability LL because we say we need to have a low carbon circular economy, right? So this is the way to contribute. And as I mentioned, one of the strongest features that we have is the carbon footprint that we considering. It's I like to see Sangeeta's presentation on this, on the waste of the sugarcane and how it is, because this is also very important, and we do that also with our partners and our suppliers in order to achieve the most sustainable sugarcane, because it's not just any sugarcane, right? You need to bring a very strong program to keep this circularity, the efficiency and sustainability, also when you look at the people and so on, right? So because of that, we can reach a negative carbon footprint of minus 12 kilos of carbon for every kilo of polyethylene we produce. And when we compare with the global average, you're actually removing a delta of 5 kilos of CO2, right? So this is one of the benefits of why the customers also use this type of product.
And quickly, why Singapore? Why did you base yourself here?
So Braskem entered Singapore back in 2010 as a commercial office to reach the Asian markets, more specifically for chemicals. And then as Braskem grew across the world, it also started to have the polymers sales here. And then eventually, when we started looking at the projects and expansions, it just made sense for me to be here on this business development role to serve APAC. I think Singapore is a very important hub in the sense of having connections with stakeholders of different sorts. So here you can talk to converters, brand owners, global, local brand owners, but also connecting with other companies, with other suppliers, with banks, right? So it's a very good place, and it's also very accessible to travel to other APAC countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you mentioned there feedstock. So how does your approach to sourcing scalable feedstock differ in this region versus the other regions in the world?
So I think first to answer this, I'll show a little bit also some concept of how we address this. And I think yesterday the first presentation from the World Bioeconomy Forum showed the importance of bioeconomy, and we treat this as a strategy and the importance globally, right? So we do have a global strategy that when we go to implement, we implement local. So when we talk about the bioeconomy, we know that we have to follow the cascading principle of the use of biomass. So we know that the most important thing is food for humans and feed for animals that also become food in the end, right? And whenever we do go for this, we need to make it clear that it's not a food competition, as Sangeeta also mentioned before, right? Is to add value to the products and make sure that the farmers who are in the end producing this will have also more revenue, better quality of life, and be able to access different markets, right? So we use these 6 Fs in the bioeconomy as a strategy and a principle for our business. And when we go a little bit deeper on this agricultural as a source of feedstock for the industry, right? We need to look at the climate change impacts, and also when we go directly to the competition with fuel, because when we go for fuel, it's already a very regulated market, right? It already has several requirements on what is the use, what is the sustainability requirement. And then when we go use this for feedstock for the plastic industry, we actually treat it as even more stringent requirements, especially from our customers in Europe, right? We feel that whenever people are putting this fuel, they don't really care what they're putting there, right? It's just gonna be burned. But when they're buying a packaging for the food, or yesterday I heard a lot about the mama effect, right? When we're talking about something that it's going to go for your children, people are very concerned. So whenever we're talking about this for food use, for people, it's much more stringent than just fuel. So we have much more requirements. and we treat this as a base for our global strategy. And we connect this also to the responsible sourcing, right? So whenever we're talking about sourcing something, needs to be sustainable. And when I say sustainable, it's not only environment, not only people, right? It needs also to be competitive. And that's why we take this approach of assuming responsibility for upstream sourcing and making sure that this is being treated properly in the environment, in the society, in the people, in the planet, right? And now touching a bit more on how we address this, we have a responsible ethanol sourcing program, which we implement. This is implemented in Brazil since we started for the bio-based polyethylene, right? And we started together with the plant, building with our suppliers, working with NGOs, later running audits by third parties, right? Where we look at these 4 pillars that I'm showing here to make sure that it's gonna be, let's say, sustainable with continuous improvement. So it also touches the improvement on the yields to make sure that it's bringing the best practices on mechanization. Then when we started, it was not fully mechanized. So this is the things that we happen. And when we go for what we do in APAC on this sense, on the project in Thailand, we're also working to build the Thai ethanol sourcing program. Because, for example, the reality of the farmers in Brazil is much different than the realities of the farmers in Thailand. In Brazil, the industry has changed. Even within Brazil, it's different. So the northeast of Brazil, I would say it's a little bit more similar to India and Thailand, where it's more small family holders that are the farmers. And in the southeast of Brazil, which is the largest production, is much more already big companies that own the farms, and they own the farms, the sugar mills, the ethanol mills, and they produce more vertically, right? So we have to treat that differently. And when we are moving out to Thailand, we're really addressing the local concerns. We're finalizing the program, but we talked with more than 70 stakeholders, from civil society to local farms, to local producers, to the government, to really understand the reality, right? And see what are the requirements that they have, that also the market has, because in the end, it needs to follow some of the market demand, right? So this is how we address the reality. And for other products, we don't have so much, let's say, control on the value chain, but we also do treat working with existing certifications that already work for fuels or for other sources. So we have the global strategy, and we try to address with the local reality as well when we implement.
Yeah, and going back to Sangeeta, a lot of co-creation, well, fully co-created, right? Because if you don't get the buy-in, then you're not going to bring people along on the journey and get over those difficult hurdles when they come. So, sorry, how long have you been in APAC? How many years?
2.5 years now.
Okay, so in that time, or maybe before, when Braskem and yourself decided to sort of, put more effort into this region, what are the most promising opportunities in APAC, and maybe how do they differ from other areas in the world?
So I think APAC is a region that globally is growing the most, right? When we talk about population growth, everything here is much stronger and growing, right? In the sense, I think APAC in particular is a very large region. You also have to segment a bit to find the opportunities. And one of the reasons we decided to come here is and start swifting here the presence, right? Because we're very strong in Americas, is to diversify the regional position of Braskem. Also being closer to the customers, because one very strong market for the bio-base is Japan, right? So as I would say, the most developed country in APAC, right? So this fosters a lot. And I think some countries in APAC also work very well, they are very well positioned as export hubs. They have a lot of free trade agreements with several countries that can serve as an end market. And because of that, they are also working on how to develop the local market. And when we look at the biomass as a feedstock, APAC, and in particular Southeast Asia, is also, okay, maybe not Singapore, but the other countries are very rich on this type of feedstock, right? So it just made a lot of sense being here and explore more the region.
So it does go back to some of those, you know, some of those, the basics of population, biomass availability, ease of building plants here,
I
and
think
compared to Europe and stuff like that?
yes. I think one point that yesterday was touched on the panel with Japan, Korea, Taiwan, right, and Thailand as well. I think the type of incentives that the countries are bringing, and in the end, it are incentives that are spread all around, but they're trying to make it more customized to fit the local challenges, right? In particular, I can mention when we're working in Thailand, and he mentioned the BOI exempt of 8 years of corporate income tax exempt for building and finding under the BCG model, right? So this type of alignment on the bio-circular green economy makes a lot of sense to also be here, right? And make sure that you have something different, because a lot of the discussions go like, we need to be fighting with the fossil pricing, thing like that, but it's not it's not a level game, right? So we also need to work with the policy makers in order to level the game and be able to have sustainable competition. Because today the problem we have with the access of plastic waste, of climate change, is just because it's not taking into account all the externalities that it causes when it's being produced, right? So we need to take into account, and I think APAC, even though it's not as integrated as Europe, right, in terms of legislation, thing like that, it is looking in this direction on how to level the game as well.
Yeah, totally. I was amazed at that panel discussion yesterday, the amount of incentives, every country that was on that panel. And I remember when I went and had a meeting with the Eastern Economic Corridor in Thailand just before Christmas. And you know, they're really working hard to attract bio-based businesses to their country. And I'm sure other countries in the region, as per that panel, are doing the same thing, which is fantastic. Okay, so looking ahead, what are Braskem's strategic priorities and areas of innovation focus for bio-based, and how do you? Yeah, so you've got your existing products. What are you looking to bring to the market, and how does that sort of dovetail with the wider strategy?
Oh, for sure. So I think maybe I'll come back to one slide here that I skipped that illustrates the, let's say, the core product where we're talking about. Braskem has an ambition to reach 1 million tons of bio-based products by 2030, right? We already debottleneck and expanded our existing asset in Brazil that started as 200,000. We debottlenecked to 275 a few years ago. We are working with SCG Chemicals to build a new plant, right? We also have announced that we're studying to produce bio-based polypropylene, which is also connected with our core products. We actually have a second wave of bio products that it's a company called Sustainia. My colleagues are going to present here later. So it's actually a joint venture between Braskem and Sojitz, right? And I'll say this is one of the ways we are looking. And I brought something here also to tell, okay, this is really related to the core business on the bio, right? And another things that we're starting to look is, okay, what else can we do that it's not directly there? So one of the points is bio-based ethylene. Our technology is one of the building blocks to do also sustainable aviation fuel, right? So I'm not saying we are going to play in the sustainable aviation fuel, but we're looking also at partnerships, because in the end, if you can find more use for the ethylene that goes not only for the chemicals, but goes for jet fuel through ethanol to jet technologies, right, is something we can do. So we partner with Lummus to license our technology and offer that to the market, which is one of the fields we're looking for. And APAC is also promising in the sense. And as I mentioned, on top of the I'm Green product for bio-based PE, PP, we started to look also in other types of bio-based chemicals. So we opened a few years ago a Bio Innovation lab in US, in the Massachusetts area near Boston, right? And there it's really an innovation hub for bio-based chemicals, where we're trying to, there is really a startup business inside Braskem, right? Where we're trying to look and launch new products and find new opportunities. So the most advanced one, where we kind of have proven technology, and now we're trying to find more partners to see how we can scale up this business case, is related to renewable solvents, right? So we're looking from all sorts of raw materials, like we're seeing here from the bio. Can be the already existing crops, can be grains, can be seeds, can be oils, right? So this type of things, lignin. So all these sorts to build different biochemicals in a way that it's more competitive, that we can find new technologies that can really scale up. So this is something that we continue to look, and I think APAC is also a promising region, not only from end market, but also in collaboration with other companies.
Excellent. You sound like you're a man on a mission and you've got a lot to achieve, which is great, right? It's exciting to sit here and hear this. Yeah, you're sort of super focused, know what you're doing, know who you've got to find, which is brilliant, right? Great to hear. Who do you need, you know, what new partners are you looking for, right? Paint us a picture of the type of companies and people that you want to do business with.
So I'm going to separate it, I'll say, in two blocks. I think first for I'll say Braskem's core business on the polyethylene, bio-based polyethylene, EVA, and bio-based polypropylene, I'm more looking for customers that are interested in sustainable products, and in the end, that can take anything that polyethylene, polypropylene, EVA can do. So from like fibers, textiles, apparel, footwear, so brand owners or converters that are looking into this to find more sustainable materials. So this is one of the interests. And I would say on a second base, more looking at this long-term solutions on biochemicals, is companies that, okay, let's be honest, the scenario for the chemical industry today is not so easy, right? We're under pressure from the typical traditional business. The margins are thin, right? Everybody's under pressure. Scenario is uncertain, right? We have wars that bring more complexity, disrupt supply chains. So we are looking for partners that can also help to escalate and scale up this type of products, and can be partners from the feedstock side and also from the market side to really distribute, market the products, or even to help build new plants on this sense.
Okay, and just from the brand side, over the last few years, how are you? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of the applications there. What applications are you looking at? What are your priority applications and why? And how is the appetite been over the last couple of years? And how do you think the appetite looks over the next few years?
Yeah, so I think the appetite is still there. So one of the things that we continue to invest in this business and to keep it as an avenue of growth, the bio-base, is because the business has been proven much more resilient than the fossil one. So whenever we go in this down cycle, the companies that truly believe in the bio-base and sustainability, they don't simply get out just because it costs more, right? It's something that they really embed. Of course, we need to keep continuing to find the competitiveness, especially when the fossil prices really go low, right? People start to question a bit more, but we have seen that our customers, in this sense, they truly believe in the bio-base. Some applications and customers we have, I can mention, like this shoe that I'm using is from a New Zealand company that they really focus on sustainable materials. They want to have a carbon neutral shoe, so they continue to use this type of solution, right? And we also work with global brand owners and with local regional brand owners that they believe in sustainability, and they also want to promote something to be different, right? So we even work with companies that they try to promote less use of single-use plastics and having more durable bottles, so you don't need to buy a bottle every time. So they actually bring the pipe structure to the countries, so you can drink potable water from the pipes and reuse the bottle instead of having single use. So this type of solutions, not only products, is also important to join forces.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting when you talk about, we see that some of those brands that are really invested, they're sticking with it through the tough times. I'm thinking of some of the brands that we work with, where it's sort of IKEA or or On Running, or L'Oreal, these sorts of people. You know, and sometimes when I'm talking, if we take the shoe market, for example, I can compare some of the sizes of the sustainability teams in some of those big brands, and that tells me how, you know, when it gets tough, are they going to row back or are they going to keep going forward? And some of them don't have the size of team to go forward, you know. So I think it's very interesting. Okay, we have a few minutes left, so let's. I was thinking, this is always, I don't know whether you know, people out there in the audience think the same, but we do a lot of work with major chemical manufacturers, and obviously the chemical manufacturers that come to our events, they're largely from the scouting teams, the R&D teams, and they're looking to meet with those smaller bio-developers who they can help scale or they can invest in, etc. But there's also this conflict between what a, you know, traditional chemical company does and now what it's trying to do. So how do you battle with, I guess, how do you battle with that conflict internally? How do you battle with that external image, you know, of people thinking you're one thing and maybe they think you're just sort of sugarcoating some of the other stuff you do?
No, yeah, I would say that for me it's an easy question to answer because we have already overcome that internally. I would say some years ago there was this discussion of is this really the right path? People are questioning, but I think over the years we have proven that it's no journey back. So I remember some years ago, when I was actually based in Europe, there was a lot of these discussions, and whenever we were talking also with peers and strategic discussions within the company, we're saying there's no way to stay like in the middle. You either go or you don't go, right? So we really decided to go and say, okay, there's no turning back, and we have learned it a lot. I think the difference one of the key things we have learned, and it's one of our differentials, is by being in this business for more than 15 years, 16 years now, we have truly learned and proved that has been successful, right? In the beginning, it was very challenging. Like, we were not making money, we were struggling, right, to run the asset full, and I think those questions always came up, right? But I think as it was embedded in the culture and people always saw value, in the past, I think we had a more startup entrepreneurship spirit in the company that really made this work, right? And it's one of the reasons we really decided, okay, let's follow through this. Nobody questions anymore because we've seen the value, and we want to keep growing in this sense, right? So when we have the joint venture and we spin off a company and we try to look in this route, so we invested in a lab in the US. So this is really how to prove that this is the path to go, right? So internally we have overcome this, and I think what really helped it to prove that internally was our partners. So having partners and customers and suppliers that truly believe and go in this journey together made it all happen, because we cannot do all of this. It's much more difficult than the traditional business, I'll say. Sometimes we refer as the vintage, right? So we need to have more people going in this journey together with us, and we know that it's for the long run, right? So we also have to sometimes stop pressuring for the short term, because we know it's a long term, especially when you have an uncertainty across the scenario.
Okay, well, I love that there's no turning back, and I like that you call it the vintage business. I've never heard that before. That's a nice way. That's a nice way of saying that. Well, listen, Lucas, we've come to the end of this chat. So, listen, thanks ever so much for giving us an insight into Braskem and how you're transforming the business and what you're looking at in the APAC region. I think it's been really, really insightful. So, I'm sure we all appreciate your time and your insights. So, thanks ever so much.
Thank you.